Okay, hi everyone, welcome to a brand new video. So this video is specifically about Firebase authentication, and we're going to embed this within a login form that I've created. So a tutorial for this login form is actually available on my channel. It was the previous video I just uploaded. So it's an in-depth tutorial for complete beginners with PyQt5, the GUI module for Python, and you can actually learn how to create this form, this login form, as well as a sign-up form. However, to watch this video, it's not necessary that you know how to create the form, since we're just going to focus on the Firebase authentication part for this video. So you can play along if you're not interested in the form, or perhaps you're using a different sort of GUI library. No problem, just follow with this video and you'll be able to understand the Firebase authentication. Now, let's just get started. But before we do that, let me just show you what we have with the form. So we have an email field where we're just going to, let's say, fake email or mail.com. So I'm just typing pretty much anything. And we have a password and a confirm for the password. So if we press sign up, we would have a print statement with successfully created account with email, fakemail@mail.com, and password 1234. But it would also take you back to the login page, and then you would also be able to log in here and also receive a print statement in response. However, there is no validation, so here we're not checking any database or any authentication system on whether or not this user is valid, as well as this password being valid. So this is basically just the skeleton of the GUI part. And for this tutorial, we're working on the sort of functionality for this application, on the authentication itself. So let's just get started. So we're going to embed Firebase into this application and then have this sort of login and sign up forms that actually work. So let's just get started. So this is console.firebase.google.com. This is where you would go to see your Firebase project. So let's just create a new project, call it auth demo, and then continue. You can enable Google Analytics, it's definitely not an issue, and then you would create your project. Now, in the meantime, let's just go back to PyCharm for a minute. To be able to interact with the Firebase services that Firebase provides, you have to use a Python library called Pyrebase. So this is the library that we're using in this video. This is a library I have extensive tutorials on. So I have tutorials for this library with authentication, storage, and Firebase real-time database. So let's just pip install Pyrebase. Now I have it, so requirement is already satisfied. However, in your case, you would wait probably a couple minutes for this to download, and then you're good to go. Alright, now that we've installed Pyrebase, we have to import it. So let's import Pyrebase. Alright, now that's done. What we need to do next is that we need to initialize a Firebase application. So to do so, let's just go back to our Firebase project. The project is ready. It has been created. So if this is your first time using Firebase, no worries, you can definitely follow along. So this is the sort of project overview that we have. This is where all the Firebase features are all together in one sort of dashboard. You can have authentication, database, storage, and a host of other features. So if you're interested in those, I do detail the different Firebase features as well as go into depth into one of them, which is the database part, in a previous video of mine. So I will link that and you can check it out if you're interested to know exactly what each of these features does. Alright, but in our video we're using the authentication, so we're going to be able to sign in and sign up using an email and a password. So before we can actually use it, we have to add it to our app. So for Python, we usually go for web app. So it's not iOS, not Android. This is a web app. We register an app, so let's say auth demo, auth. We register the app, and then we wait for it to be registered. We get a series of credentials here. Now what we want is this part, and I'll show you what we're going to do with it in a minute. So going back to Python, create a new variable called Firebase config, and it's an empty Python dictionary, and then we just paste this info. So for Python, you must turn these into strings because otherwise it will register as a variable in Python rather than an actual string. So you just need to take a minute to change these into strings. Alright, now that we have that, we can now initialize a new Firebase application. So let's just say Firebase is equal to Firebase.initialize app, and then you would give it the configuration credentials that we just gave it. Now, there are three services that Pyrebase provides. So we have auth, we have storage, and we have the database part. So in this video, we're only interested in the authentication. However, I have videos for pretty much all of these. So let's just say auth is equal to firebase.auth, and that's what we have. So this is what we'll use to be able to interact with the authentication system in our app. So let's just go back to Firebase and check what we have. So let's close this and then go to authentication, and we'll see what it looks like. So authentication, basically, this is where you would have all the users that sign into your application. You would also have some information as to when they're signed in, when they're using it, when they last signed in, and when their account was created, as well as others. So first we have to set up a sign-in method, because it's not built in that we have to use email and password. We just have to enable it. So here it's disabled, and we can enable email and password, and we save it. So there are a host of other options that we have right here, such as phone, Google. You can sign in with Facebook, sign in with Twitter. Now we can explore these in a future video, but it's not for this video. Alright, so now we've enabled email and password. We go back here. So now we can actually start creating users. Now you can manually add users from here by having an email and a password, but we want to actually do it through the code itself. So first we're going to start by using the create account form to be able to actually create an account through the form and have it in this authentication system. So here's what we're going to do. So let's just go to create account, and so here, let's just revise what we have in this sort of code. So here we're validating that the password and the confirmed password have the same text within them. So we're saying that if these texts are identical, meaning we actually did confirm the password, we can print that we successfully created an account with this email. Now this print statement is obviously not for our use anymore. So what we need to do is that we're going to actually create an account with this email and password. So here's what we do. So we say auth.create user with email and password, and we give it the email and password. So it's pretty straightforward. It's literally one line of code. So this is what we have. Now if we run it, this will actually work. So running it, obviously we're not interested in the login form, we're interested in the create account one. So let's say fake mail at mail.com, and then give it some fake passwords, 5678, and then 12345678. And then we press sign up, and it takes us back to the login screen, meaning this line of code here was successful. So we have no exception, and it took us back to the login screen. So to check that, we go back to the Firebase part and we reload, and we can see that we have just created a new user. We have a new user with an email and a password. Now we cannot see the password due to security reasons. So this is what makes your application secure. You obviously cannot be snooping on users' passwords. So pretty much that's, we just were able to create an account. Now what happens when we have to create an account with the same email is that an exception is thrown. So let me just demo this. So let's stop and rerun, and we just go to create account, and if I use the fake mail email that I just used now, so I would probably get an exception. So let's just, and then sign up. We have an exception, so with this exit code, mainly because this is a PyQt5 application, so we did not actually see the exception itself. So what we need to do here is that we need to try and catch. So try, and then accept by printing invalid email. Alright, so now if we run it, we go to create account, we type fake mail at mail.com, then we give it a password and a new password, and we sign up. It says invalid email, meaning we just made an error. So this is sort of one way you can catch it, by having a print statement here. Another way would be to actually have an error message show up right around the form, so about here, and allow this to really just show up and alert your user that they're entering an email that already exists. So let's just do that. Okay, so to do this, we actually have to refer to the PyQt5 Designer, which is this tool that you can use to build these PyQt5 GUIs, just like the form that we were just using. So again, if you are in this video only for the Firebase part, then no worries, because this video is essentially 95% Firebase. Everything else is already done in a previous video for PyQt5, and this is just a minor detail. It's just a nice touch if anyone's interested, and it could potentially give you an idea even if you're using a totally different GUI module. Alright, so let's just launch the PyQt5 Designer. To do so, just have to go to the search bar and then type Designer. So for more on Designer and PyQt5, like I said, refer to the first part of this tutorial where we actually build the form that I showed you. So I'm just going to open a recent, which is the create account, and there it is. So this is the form that we were using, and we said we want to type up an error message in case the username actually already exists and we get an exception. So what we were doing here is that we were printing invalid email. What we want now is that we want to actually show it in the designer. So going back here, we have to create a new label. So just we get a label. So again, if this is a bit confusing, don't worry, this is not that hard. You can refer to the first video in case it's a bit complicated. So let's just type invalid email, and then we're just gonna make this bigger, obviously, because it's very tiny, and we put it here, and we change the style sheet. We font size it to maybe 12, and then we color, let's just get a nice red because it's an error message, so it should convey that. Alright, so this seems pretty solid. Now let's just move it back here. Now what we want to do is that we want to show this when we actually do get this exception. So when we're catching the exception, we want to be able to show it. So going back to the code, first we have to make sure that it's visible as false at the start. So in our initialize function for the creating account, so as soon as we create this dialog for this screen, we want that this label, let's just name it first. So invalid, we want invalid to be, so self.invalid.set visible to false. Alright, and then here when we accept, we want to actually perform the same statement but set it to true so that we can actually see it. One thing to note, however, is that we should probably move this part here inside the try statement. Why is that? Because in case of an error, we actually want to stay within the same create account page, and we don't want to change back to the login page, so we can keep it within the try to have a more clean and better layout. And this right here should be true as well. Okay, so now we're ready to run it. So now if we run it, we get the following. So this is our login form. We're not interested in login now because we're not working with it. However, we are interested in the create account. So we go to create account. As we can see, the label that we just designed is not visible because we set visible to false. So now if I type the same email, so fakemail@mail.com, and then any password, but I have to make sure to write the exact same password. So running it, we have now the login form that we have, so we're interested in create account. Now if we type in the same email that we have, so the one that already exists in the authentication database of Firebase, and then I just type in any random password, so and then rewrite the same password, then I click sign up. And now I can get an invalid email error message. So this one didn't exist before, but when I pressed sign up, when Firebase attempted to execute this statement right here, but the email already existed in the system, it was unable to do so. Then we went to the accept part and we set this invalid message to true. So that's basically how we do it. So now that we have everything done for the create account part, we just have to form the login part as well. So how do we do the login part? Now, the user will be inputting an email and a password. So in this case, we were printing, so successfully logged in with email and password. So let's just demo it just to refresh the memory and actually know what's going on. So mail@mail.com, and then like any password here, and then we just log in, and then it would get printed right here, and there it is. So what we want to do is that instead of this print statement right here, we want to actually have the authentication system enter a new user or enter a new sign in for an existing user. So here's what we want to do. So we want auth.login sign in, with email and password. So email, password. Now, of course, this also can be quite problematic, but let's just first try it out. So let's just run it. This is the login form. So we want to sign in to fakemail@mail.com with the password that we put. So we press login. Now, obviously, in this case, nothing's going to happen because we haven't chosen to change the screen or command it to do anything. But we can verify whether it was successful by going back to the sign up part. So before it would say signed in on July 18th. Now today it's July 20, so I filmed this video in 2 parts. And now if I refresh, I should see it signed in as July 20. So basically, I just managed to successfully log in. And in an ideal scenario, you would have another screen you would move to upon signing in correctly. Alright, so that's pretty intuitive, that's pretty straightforward. I'm pretty sure you know how the login and sign in process works for most applications. So now that we've done this, of course, the same way that we did with the create account, we have to cover the necessary issues that might happen. So what issues could occur here? Either the username could be invalid, so this username does not exist, and by username I mean email, or the password could be wrong for this specific email. In all cases, we just have to try and accept it. So let's just try and tap this and then accept. So what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to recreate the same thing we did with the create account form and also add in an invalid label. So let's just stop this before we go. So back to Designer, let's open the login UI. Now here it is. So this is the login UI. What I want to do is I want a similar error message. So I'm just going to copy paste this since we already have the CSS for it and everything. So it's also named invalid. I just have to save this and go back to the code. So now I'm going to do essentially the same thing. When I initialize this login GUI, I'm going to set it to as not visible. So set invisible to false. So self.invalid.set visible to false. And then here, when I accept, meaning an exception occurs when I was trying to sign in, I'm just going to self.invalid.set visible to true. And that's basically it. So let's just have a final demo of things. So now, I'm going to type an email that doesn't exist, and then just going to type any password, and I press login, and I get an invalid email because this email does not exist. So I just remembered this shouldn't be invalid email, it should be invalid email or password. So because it can be either of them. So let's just fix it, and this is just for aesthetics, and it's more popular in the industry to actually say invalid username or password for security reasons. So you're better off saying this than rather having 2 different types of error handlings for wrong email versus wrong password, because it is better for security to leave the user a bit confused about whether the user or the password is wrong. All right, and now I'm just going to do the same thing but actually type in a wrong password. So I'm going to fakemail@mail.com. So this is the one we're using for this demo, and then I'm just going to type in a random password, so like pretty much anything, login, and it's a fake email or password, so it's invalid. Now, what if I want to create a new account? So let's just go to create account. I'm gonna make a dummy mail at mail.com, and then I'm gonna give it a password of 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, and then confirm it, and then I'm going to press sign up. So we obviously successfully managed to sign up because I'm back at the login form, so I can log in to that same thing I just created. So let's just actually verify this first in the authentication. So a new user is here, created on July 20th, dummy mail@mail.com. Now I want to sign in, obviously, so let's just dummymail@mail.com and then type in 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 login, and we're done. So obviously nothing happens here in our case. You can choose to clear these different text fields and leave them empty, so there is no problem there. So thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you were interested. I hope it was useful. For more in-depth on authentication, you can actually check out a video of mine I have specifically for Python with authentication. Otherwise, it's definitely okay. This video is okay. If you're more interested in more PyQt5 videos, let me know. So thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for the next one, and bye-bye.